the state. I felt let's do it at lunch, then we can go to Chicken Inn afterwards. I'm joking. How are you? We haven't had a briefing from the spokesperson for quite some time, but there have been a lot of events which are happening in the party, and in most instances, the message was coming from the horse's mouth, which is the president. He has been at each and every party meeting calling in the press. So I wanted you to get it straight from the horse's mouth. I hope you've benefited more from it. But today we are having a briefing, a rundown over a period of time. And I will start with the highlight of the diplomatic event which is coming next week, which is the SADC Heads of States meeting. I want to hail first the president for fighting to make sure that what is the norm in SADC is respected, which is the rotation of the chairmanship without chastising a member state. All of you are aware, or you need to be aware that since our historic land reform, there have been concerted efforts by post-imperial interests in the region and their supporters in the West to try to have Zimbabwe be put under the kosher by SADC. We went through a difficult period where the SADC tribunal was tried to be used to reverse the land reform in Zimbabwe. And it went so far as concerted efforts to make sure that Zimbabwe is ostracized from SADC, because we had charted a Pan-Africanist path about Zimbabwe's future development for the benefit of the majority of the African population of Zimbabwe, in order to fulfill the goals and tenets of our national liberation movement struggle in the 1970s. So when we recovered our land, there was umbrage, there was gnashing of teeth, faced by the settler colonial minority outposts in Southern Africa who were dispossessed. Then they teamed up with the metropolitan powers of their original countries of origin, which is Brussels, Paris, London, and of course Washington, the superpower, which also has got a European origin. It is a matter even which came to a high point during the Operation Restore Legacy. You may remember that the improvised foreign minister, Mozambique, tried to call for a SADC ministerial summit to condemn the people of Zimbabwe who have gone into the streets in support of their army in order to stop in the tracks the dynastic tendencies which had taken over towards the end of the First Republic. So I'm highlighting instances over a period of 2 decades where SADC has been, there have been attempts to abuse SADC so that it can chastise and have Zimbabwe ostracized from the region. I'm very glad that the policies of President Dr. Emerson Mnangagwa, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, have reversed that trend through his engagement and re-engagement policy. And the stature of his leadership in SADC has risen. His star is shining high among his peers in the SADC region, and there's no more question of Zimbabwe and it's legitimate to assume the rotating chairmanship of SADC. Yes, there are spirited efforts by the same quarters to try to tarnish the success which he has scored by hosting SADC as chairman in the next 2 weeks, in the next week. But these are coming to naught. His prestige among his peers in the region is at an all-time high. And the star of Zimbabwe is also shining bright. And what happened last week at the industrialization seminar by SADC on Zimbabwe clearly shows that the path which Zimbabwe has chosen for its development is striking the right chords with our peers in the region. Who among them, those who want to glorify the colonial period and its injustice of minority alienation, of majority alienation by West settler minority, can doubt the progress which Zimbabwe has made in the last 5 years of President Emmerson Mnangagwa's rule. We have the success of introducing an original African currency, going back to the future of the Munumutapas, when gold was the mainstay of the Zimbabwean currency. Remember, the worst enemy of rulers over the years is inflation in any country. So if there's inflation, inevitably are uprisings. That's what changes governments over the past 5,000 years of human history. So when you have stable societies, it shows that there is monetary stability. So when the Munumtapas established a kingdom, first at Mapungubwe in South Africa, not the Munumtapas, but the great Zimbabwe civilization, which became later the Munumtapa civilization, went on to establish Great Zimbabwe, went on to have Danamombe, to have Kami in Bulawayo, and many others. There are 200 to 300 others. It shows that the societies were stable. Why were they stable? Because there was political stability within those societies. And what is a hallmark of political stability? It's a stable currency. So Zimbabwe has restored the virtues of a stable currency through the Zimbabwe dollar, through the Zimbabwe WD, the ZiG. And how do we owe that? Because we're going back to use our gold, which is a God-given mineral, of which Zimbabwe is in abundance, and that is given as the currency. This is the highest hallmark of achievement by the Second Republic, establishing a currency which is not fiat-based like the US dollar or any other national currencies which you find, which is based on a mineral whose value at any particular second in whichever market globally is known, it's standard, from Colombia to Caledonia, from Australia to Azerbaijan, from Brazil to Bolivia to Belize. The price of gold is the same at any particular day. So this is the beauty which Zimbabwe has introduced into the monetary affairs of this country. And the president was almost giving it an apocalyptic aspect yesterday when he says, this is God's work, the ZiG. Yes, because gold has been surviving as a currency for all countries for more than 5,000 years of human history. So we are on the right track. This is one of the reasons why the star of Zimbabwe is rising, why the president is getting so much respect among his peers. Another aspect of it is, of course, the restoration of steel production in Zimbabwe. When he started this project in 2013, there was disbelief that we could get Zimbabwe to produce steel again. And he was fighting against the closure of Zisco Steel, which was done in order to compound the impact of sanctions and it was instigated by the Western countries. When it was Rhodesia, they gave it Risco. When it became Zimbabwe, they made sure that Zisco closes. And once you have no steel, because steel is like air and water to your body for nations. If a nation wants to progress, what air and water does to your body on a day-to-day basis is exactly what steel does to the progress and development of nations. So here we are, 2 months ago, a blast furnace is fired in Maniz, and we are now producing twice the steel which we historically produced. And this is the first of 8 blast furnaces planned for the Maniz area by one particular company. But because of the abundance of steel, of iron ore in the area, there's now the prospect of many other steel companies coming to Zimbabwe, because there's 78 kilometers of iron ore from Beira to Munyati to Featherstone. All that is iron ore. So world steel companies are drooling about the prospect of coming to Zimbabwe to put steel plants in Zimbabwe. Because from the gate of the steel plants in Zimbabwe, there should be no country which can produce steel cheaper than Zimbabwe, because those hills are near the blast furnaces. Because the ferrochrome is not far away on the Great Dyke, 20 to 300 kilometers away from the steel plants at Maniz. And the coking coal from Mwanga is 400 kilometers by straight line from Maniz. Compare with China, which is to bring it all from Indonesia, 4,000 kilometers away, Australia, 8,000 kilometers away, South Africa, 10,000 kilometers away, Brazil, 12,000 kilometers away. In Zimbabwe, God put everything in one place. So if we can address the power problems which is being addressed now, no steel will be cheaper than that one from Zimbabwe. What does it mean? It means that we become the global center for the production of steel. These are the deliverables which the president has done for this particular country. Beyond that, there is him taking a ride on the shift from fossil fuel vehicle production to a new energy electric vehicle mobility. There is this paradigm shift in how human beings move from combustion, from fossil petroleum to electric energy. And Zimbabwe, again, is the God-given bonanza of lithium in quantities which make us probably the 5th largest hard rock resource country in the world, resource nation. And President Mnangagwa brings the best possible billionaires in that industry into Zimbabwe, and they start processing that mineral, not just you got to not just mining it, but processing it. You got to remember we're a landlocked country. If we try to sell ores, we can't compete with countries with coastlines. So the president develops a strategy whereby those minerals are beneficiated with Zimbabwe, like steel, like lithium. So we are now part of the global value chain in the new energy storage batteries of electric vehicles. These are singular successes by the president in the economic sphere. I'm not talking about self-sufficiency in wheat. I'm not talking about in wheat production. Look at how we are offsetting the impact of El Nino last season by producing winter wheat on a scale unprecedented by Zimbabwe. So these are the things which have really given Zimbabwe kudos when it comes to the hosting of SADC. What I'm saying is nothing succeeds like success. and the industrialization of week of SADC was something of a showcase of what Zimbabwe is achieving. So those who are detractors of Zimbabwe, those who can never see anything good about their country, they are being hit with gusts of hot air, spelling success from Zimbabwe. It's said that for all the efforts which have been made up to today by the president, Chamisa has never tried to visit any of the lithium mines. He has never tried to visit the processing plants. He has never tried to visit any of the steel plants, the steel plant which the Zimbabwe, which is, even if it is on his highway to his home in Chile, he goes there, passes through. He never makes a diversion to go and see the marvel which has happened on the sidelines, on the sides of the highway which he drives. Why? Because he never wishes anything good from his country. All he has is got a singular pursuit for power at State House. It blinds him completely from trying to be aware, to notice the success which is hitting like lightning into his eyes. So what does he do? They try to scupper the image. They try to tarnish the image of Zimbabwe and scupper the prospect of Zimbabwe hosting a SADC summit by introducing extraneous issues which are not on the agenda of SADC, which SADC do not entertain, which SADC has refused to entertain. He wants to introduce them, this time by trying to organize diversionary demonstrations, calling for the organizing of diversionary demonstrations. So it won't work this time. First, the population of Zimbabwe is content about what the president is doing. They can see even the sprucing up of the city of Harare itself for this event. His many years of governance of this city as the CCC, MTC, is nothing except garbage stockpiles. Now we have thoroughfares running through the city from the airport to the new parliament building at Mount Abdul. You think a population which now has a stable currency, a population which has got its youths minting money from gold, SMEs, in Makaha, in Kwekwe, in Chegutu, in Gwanda. These are young people minting money, $2 billion US dollars worth of gold production by SMEs. You think they will listen to somebody who tells them to stop their production every day so that they can spruce the ego of Chamisa and his detractors? They are bound to fail. It won't happen. Even before we talk of the Zimbabwean state's capacity, just the population itself will not listen to that dead-end message by Chamisa. So we are looking forward to a very successful SADC summit with our president assuming the chairmanship and brandishing Zimbabwe as the case study of the rise of a post-colonial African modern nation. When you start producing lithium for Toyota, for Ford, for GM, for BMW, for Nissan, for General Motors, for BYD in China. These are the big names now in Kinders. When you start producing world-class products which are finding their way into world-class factories for the production of cars, it makes we've arrived as a country. When you start producing steel by a Fortune 500 company, which is in the top 300 in the whole world, the quality from Manise is as good as any you can ever find. I may not be surprised that in the next 36 months, you will see powertrains of electric vehicles being manufactured in Zimbabwe because the quality of steel is good. It's coming from the best company doing the business. So the industrialization capacity coming out of Manizi is mind-boggling. This is going to become the major industrial hub of Africa, producing electric powertrains for the global market. Nothing now stops Zimbabwe from doing that. So the message of the president about industrialization, about the renaissance of Africa, he has got tangibles which he is delivering, which everybody can identify with. So he has done a lot to spruce up the image of Harare, new buildings, a new airport, a spanking new parliament building. These are all hallmarks of somebody who knows what he's doing. So I want to say to the president, you've done a good job. And Zanu PF, yesterday at the youth conference, there was repeated accolades to the president from the 10 provinces of our youth, who are all mesmerized, if I can put it mildly, by the achievements which the president has delivered. But more than that, they could actually relate some of those projects to their own provinces because of the decentralization mantra. They could relate to these projects in their own provinces. So this is the success which the president is moving into the SADC chairmanship with. A case study of Zimbabwe successfully showing the rise of a post-colonial, modern African nation. And there's no turmoil. Some of the countries, they are our African countries, of course, they've had to face some turmoil in recent months. We are Africans, we never, when our fellow African countries are in problems, we always sympathize and empathize with them. But you can contrast some of those model countries and the challenges which they faced with the stability which Zimbabwe is facing. And this is a Zimbabwe which shows that it acts out of its own volition and delivers homegrown solutions about our progress. So much on the SADC. We are very confident that this will be a very, very resounding success, and that Zimbabwe's chairmanship will chart new vistas for Africa's forward march as a rising continent. And we congratulate the president for this achievement, and we condemn unreservedly the rogue elements who are driven by sulkiness and jealousy about this success of Zimbabwe and are trying to stir up nefarious agendas on the social media. They won't succeed. The other thing which I want to highlight is that the youth conference, the youth assembly yesterday followed the footsteps of the Women's Assembly earlier on as we build up towards our party elective congress in October this year. And in their affirmation of the leadership, of their loyalty to the leadership of President E.D. Mnangagwa. So this is an important win, following again earlier on the Veterans Congress, another organ of the party. So 3 organs of the party have all come out guns blazing in support of the leadership of President E.D. Mnangagwa. Yes, there has been some debate about succession, but I want to highlight that the president yesterday said he's a constitutionalist. He will stick to the constitution, which, by the way, he was the chief architect. The current Zimbabwean constitution, the president was the Minister of Justice and Vice President later on when it was written. He was the chief legal mind of that constitution. It's inconceivable that somebody who writes a constitution himself can then be apostate to the constitution which he has written. It does not sound nice, because he could have actually put the ideas which are being falsely attributed to him into the tenets of that particular constitution when he was writing it. So yesterday, he, at he went out of his way at the Youth Assembly to say he is a constitutionalist who abides by the tenets of the Constitution. This debate is being foisted from external quarters. And sometimes in Shona, there's an apt, in fact, in Shona, not sometimes, there is an apt adage. Kana washida kuziya mwana wemuru, akuna uziya mai wemuru, bata msukwe wayo. Amai wacho vanobva wauya kuzokutunga. Now to get Malema from South Africa, coming from Norway, talking about succession in Zimbabwe, it shows that this is a foreign agenda. And to whom does Malema pander to? He panders to the dictates of the post-colonial or of the colonial company, colonial era company, Anglo-American, which is an offshoot from Cecil John Rhodes, which actually ran this region from Cape Town up to the Copper Belt in Congo and Zambia. And it manifests itself today in an organization called the Brandest Foundation. The Brandest Foundation is the one which authored Mumba of Zambia's document about the elections in Zimbabwe. This is the ilk from which Julius Malema emanates from. He posits as a pseudo-revolutionary and a cryptic intellectual. He never properly went to school. And he propounds big theories about how Zimbabwe should be run, as if it is his own country. At 43 years of age, he is no longer a youth. Who is he from South Africa to try to tell the youths of Zimbabwe who should be their ruler? Malema, pakatipo payama. Why? Because he is a friend of Kasukuwere, who a few days ago was echoing the same sentiments with the youths of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe must arise, must arise. He has just been in an election. He comes third for a party which broke away from the NC several years ago. Third from a Umkondo Esizwe's MK from Zuma, a party which is hardly 6 months. It's clear that his pseudo-revolutionary message within South Africa has reached a dead end. That's why he could be overtaken. That's why he never made it himself to become the president. So charity begins at home. If you are so good at leadership that you can give strictures to Zimbabwean youth, why not make it success your own homegrown ride to power at Mashambanzo in Pretoria, in Tshwane? He can't. So he suffers from the Rhodes syndrome. And a sick young man comes from Europe, lands in South Africa, diamonds are discovered, he ends up as the ruler of South Africa and builds an empire from South Africa, dreaming all the Cape to Cairo. These grandiose ideas about an interloping colonial are what shapes Malema's mind. He sees himself as the ruler of Zimbabwe. As if the people of Zimbabwe on their own are not enough to be ruling their country. We say to him, keep your dirty hands out of Zimbabwe's affairs, Malema. Focus on trying to win a South African election first. That's why there are boundaries. That's why the Limpopo is a boundary between Zimbabwe and South Africa. She has no authority at all to be speaking about Zimbabwean politics. And these illusions and delusions of grandeur of being a latter-day African Cecil John Rhodes, straddling from Cape to Cairo. This time he wants to say from Cape to Harare. It won't happen. Our youths, I will speak about what they've done for this country later. They will not listen to the nonsense which is coming from Malema. He has no deliverables himself from within his political career, which one can count on. Now look at what the President and the Second Republic has done in 5 years. Raised production of gold from less than 10 tons to 35 to 40 tons, supported by Zimbabwe's youths, who are accounting for 60 to 70% of that gold production. You know where they were last week, the youths of Zimbabwe and their organizations? They were at a Gold Association meeting in Shanghai. This is the foremost gold buying country of the world today. Maybe they compete with America. This is what Zimbabwean youths have now earned for themselves. High seats at the global gold market, Zimbabwe, because they can produce $2 billion worth of gold a year, and they can go beyond that. These are tangibles. This is what is behind the ZIG, the activities of the Zimbabwean youth. Now you are being told by a charlatan from South Africa to work against a government which has made you so rich that you can account for $2 billion. You think they will listen to him? They won't. This is what Zimbabwe's youth have achieved. More than that, you may not know that Manise was built in record 18 months as a steel plant. 18 months. World-class technology grafted to young Zimbabweans. The structure which you see there is fabricated in Zimbabwe. Only the core technology came from China. The Chinese experts came, 400 of them. They taught 1,800 young Zimbabweans how to fabricate steel to build the superstructure which you see there. Those powers, like that power station producing 80 megawatts, built by Zimbabweans. The blast furnaces themselves, built by young Zimbabweans, fabricating that steel, coming raw from China and South Africa, being worked upon by Zimbabweans. In terms of steel fabrication, our young people now are as good as anybody in the whole world today. Actually, those people, they deserve accolades, they deserve certificates for achievement. This is young Zimbabweans showing what they can do with the world when given a chance of exposure to world-class technology. Why do they have to listen to Kasukuwere? Look, what did he achieve when he was a minister of indigenization? Loud mouth, talking ignorance all the time, because he never had a proper exposure to school when everybody else was going to school during that period of time. So his miseducation and the cryptic knowledge of Malema about school created this subversive combustion which makes them talk about things which are beyond their intellectual capabilities to grasp. Nobody will listen to them because Zimbabwe's youths are achievers. Look at what they are doing with the gold leaf of tobacco. $800 million every season. Satisfying the best cigarette makers in the whole world. That's why every March they all come to the tobacco auction floors in Zimbabwe. World-class tobacco production, Zimbabwe is #1. Who is doing it? Zimbabwe's youth. These things would not have been possible without the Zimbabwe revolution. And the stabilization of the currency is seeing this world translate into the pockets of these young people. Now you want to tell them that there is something wrong about their government. You got to have your head, get your head examined. So the Zimbabwean youth, they are focused on progress and they see deliverables coming from our president. Obviously, when the Malemas start talking of succession and they are not members of the party and they are not Zimbabweans, it creates anxiety among these youth. So they develop a defensive attitude and they go for strong leadership. That's why they are saying to the president, Rambai Muripo, because we want to safeguard the wins which we are scoring right now. You have delivered wins. We see more of them coming. We want Rambai Muripo. It's a democratic wish on the part of the youth. After all, it's a revolutionary democratic party. They are free, like the women, like the war veterans, to express themselves on that particular issue. You cannot say they should be stopped from debating, from expressing their intentions. But at the same time, they are also pushing back against the anxiety and insecurity of those who want to become dictators of who should be the ruler of Zimbabwe and who should not be. So they are also appealing to our party leadership to close ranks so that none among our party leadership is found vulnerable, susceptible to these misdirected calls from outside parties. Why didn't Anglo-American establish a world-class steel facility in Zimbabwe when they were rulers in colonial times? Now they want to pan the progress which is being made. You see it by even creating falsehoods about Chinese investments. Here is a country which is responsible for most of the world production today, China, even for America, even for Britain, even for the West. Most of their goods come from China. It comes and invests in your country. And it is being judged by those who are used to the Rhodesian industries. All the Rhodesian industries produced short goods during Ian Smith's era. And when they were exposed to world markets, nobody bought Rhodesian goods. That's why those factories collapsed. Now the president is building world-class new factories in Zimbabwe. And those investors, they are being racially red-lined or yellow-lined because it's called the yellow peril from Rhodesian times. Anything Chinese, because they say yellow peril. So they ascribe falsehoods of all sorts about Chinese investors, about Chinese people. We are not a racist country. That's why we tolerated whites even when we were fighting against them. That's why we have the most appealing race relations in the world today. Well, some people are rioting in London on racial lines today. In Zimbabwe, we don't have anything of that. I don't see my white neighbors as anything other than Zimbabweans. We have a model of racial tolerance which is unbeaten on the global stage. So all tendencies at trying to bring racial profiles about investors, ZANU-PF condemns unreservedly because the president said we are open for business and capital has no color. Capital is funds. They can come in US dollar and yen, in Chinese renminbi, in British pounds, now in ZiG. Capital has no color. You only see the end product. If you steal a steel plant, that's what capital has done. It could have been by a Japanese, by an Indian, by a Korean, or by whatever. So the president says Zimbabwe is open for business. So we ZANU-PF, we condemn any attempts at racial profiling of investors whom the president is working so hard to bring into the Zimbabwean economy. Okay. From? Two. Why are you talking like you are not confident about that? Man. 263 times. Yes. Yeah. The president recently in Mutare spelled out the constitution as the Bible of Zimbabwean, of ZANU-PF political management. And in it, he unequivocally stated that it is not upon him to impose or to choose or to ordain a leader for ZANU-PF, let alone for the people of Zimbabwe. Understandably so, because our president is a revolutionary Democrat. To win the war, we had to get the conscious support of the Zimbabwean people, individually and collectively. So the decisions about our political destiny today were made democratically through sacrifice by the Zimbabwe people. And the president simply said, such a people who can sacrifice their lives in a democratic manner to free their country. Who am I to impose a leader upon them? That's what the president said. So they are quarters, which I mentioned earlier on. They may not be the vice president himself, who are foisting this agenda from outside, trying to put the issue of succession ahead of 28 into current Zimbabwean political discourse, when our focus should be on exactly the things which I've been talking about, economic and business progress. That's what the mandate of the president was in 2023. So all I did was to reiterate that in Zanu PF, there are no announcements or ordinations of leaders. You must make sure that you get liked by the people by doing what gets you support from the people. Because the vote of the people is what will make you a leader in Zanu PF. The vote of the membership. That's what I said. And I may not have been answering to any particular person within Zanu PF. I definitely was answering to that external constituency which is trying to foist the idea of certain individuals as being natural or ordained leaders of Zanu PF. Azviko kupati kwedu izvozvo zveordination. That's what I said. I hope there's clarity on that issue. And I'm very sure that bona fide members of Zanu PF, including in the leadership, who are revolutionary Democrats, who say it is the choice of the people for somebody to end up as the leader of Zanu or to be the leader of Zimbabwe. It applies to me, it applies to anybody who is a member, it applies to anybody who is a member, kwa Gezani kana ari kubva kuMount Darwin. Ungangoitawo leader weZanu PF kana uchidiwa nevanhu. That's a good thing. Zvakashata here izvozvo. But kana maakuti because Mutsvangwa anotaurisa ari pamberi penyu ngaachingwe ndingoti ndafana inini ndinofana kuti ndoda kuti ndo leader because ndiri kukunakidzai pamberi pemakamera saka ndinda mukuru weZanu PF. That's not Zanu PF's constitution. Zanu PF constitution says winner X vote yevanhu kuti uite mukuru. Zanu PF and the constitution of the Republic of Zimbabwe, which was written by the current president, says the people of Zimbabwe choose their leader. There is no anointing. But vaiva vane Cecil John Rhodes syndrome yandambotaura yemunhu anongobva kuEngland woita madiamonds opedzisira kutonga Africa asina amuchuza. Ndo vari kutaura kuti dai muZanu PF manzai. Dai manzai. Haisi pati yenyu. So naturally, the young people in Zanu PF, when they see something like that coming from outside, they get agitated. Kuti ai chinhu chakafira mayouth edu ichi mazuva ayaya chekuti vanhu vachuze. Pane vamwe vakunzi havafaniri kuchuzwa, vanongopinda vasina kuchuzwa. The youth get agitated. And that's why they bend around their president. Because the president says, I will not usurp the decision of the membership of Zanu PF or the people of Zimbabwe to choose a leader. Now, so far as was on a president, because that is within the democratic revolutionary traditions of Zanu PF. That's why in 1980, even when we were winning the war, we are the first revolutionary movement in modern history to say, let's put our guns to silence. Let the people of Zimbabwe go and put an X on a ballot so that they can baptize our military victory. We don't want to depart from that tradition of people choosing their leaders. I hope it answers you. And definitely, if you tell Zimbabwean youths, you tell Zimbabwean women, you tell the war veterans that the Zanu PF makuitwa anoint or ordain leadership. Matomutsan. Because Zvakafirwa, the vote was a product of a sacrifice, life by life, limb by limb, eye by eye. Chakafirwa chinhu chinonzi exit. Ngachirambe chirimo muZanu PF ndozviri kutaura vadiki. And we are very happy that the president who wrote the constitution enshrining those aspects of the revolutionary democratic tradition of ZANU-PF, yesterday affirmed it that I'm a constitutionalist. I am not going to be ordaining leadership. Saka vari kuda kuti vamwe vanhu ana Kasukuwere ana Malema nevamwe vanofunga kuti vanhu vanoordainwa neBrandis Foundation hazvibvumiwe kuZANU-PF. I think that explains I don't know whether I can be as clear as any further. And I'm prepared to answer another question as a follow-up.
What were the purpose of the inter-district meetings that will be held across the country?
Well, I told you about the youth assembly. Every organ of the party under the constitution of Zambia must hold an assembly meeting every year. Especially, more so when we are going towards a congress. So similarly, the War Veterans League, the new league of the party, they went through inter-district meetings. And they came back to Harare and they reported as a War Veterans Assembly. Women went through a similar process. They came through to Harare and they made their report, again endorsing their confidence in the leadership of President Mnangagwa. Now it was the turn of the youth. They also went through inter-district meetings and they also similarly came to the conclusion. So there is an alignment of views among the various leagues which constitute ZANU-PF. We are a party of structures, and that's what we do. We consult. The inter-districts, they start from the grassroots. Musangano kumasero. Chimwe chipati chechi chisina izvozvo munoziva kwachakazoenda. Hapana chipo. Vanozongomuka musi weSADC. Ndopanonzwa kuti tifusiya dzoka vakuda kudemonstrata paSADC. Day to day hakuna structure yaChamisa. But zvine mari because some Brandis Foundation and some commodity traders in the West who used to get our minerals for free. Varinga vavanyorera check kuti takurohwa 10 noti nemaChina. Muri kurohwa 10 noti nemaChina because hamusi kuisa mari yenyu patafura yekuinvest. If American money comes and it's better than Chinese money, so be it. Zimbabwe gets a better deal from capital, from whichever source. We have no problem with money from Europe or from America or from anybody. So, look, we are a country which wants to be friends to all and enemy to none. And I think it answers. These are just party organs discharging their constitutional mandates, duty, obligations under the revolutionary constitution, under the constitution of the Revolutionary Democratic Party. Ipanzwe ipapa, Revolutionary Democratic Party. Yakabvuma kukanda mafuti pasi kuti mabara asachuze munhu anotonga Zimbabwe muna 1979. Ikati ballots ndo ano. So we are not a bullet to office party. Since 1980, our independence is not bullet to office. Our independence is ballot to office, which is an emphasis on the credentials of voting within ZANU-PF. So there is no provision for anointments or ordination in ZANU-PF, as we per constitution. And the president made it a point of affirming that yesterday. He says, I am a constitutionalist. Another question? For 7. Oh, okay. You see, inini ndakakura naamai vanga vari strict. Ukati musuno yatete woita manyemu wotaura zvemanga-manga uchitaura kuti atete vangu varipo. Amai vangu vanokuratidza kuti muyeni haupinimidze pamberi pemuyeni. All this time the CCC was quiet because they are disorganized. Now we have a major diplomatic event which we have worked hard to host, which we are doing everything possible to look as spruced as ever, to look good. Amai vakugezesa kuti uonekwe zvakanaka naatete. Iwo wakusvika ipapa kuti vanonditi, vanonditi pamberi paatete. Amai vangu vanokutorera shamhu pamberi paatete ipapa vokushapura. Vabva futi atete vokurova futi kuti hazviitwi. This is mischief on the part of Chamisa. It has nothing to do with showing democrats, because if he wanted to be democratic, he should have won the elections. If he wanted to be democratic, he would have sorted the mess in his party through democratic means. He didn't sort that out. How do you want to be democratic by demonstrating Muswe SADC when you are not democratic by running the affairs of your party on a day-to-day basis? It's mischief, and we are a party which fought a war. We know the pain of organization. We know the sacrifice of discipline in order to achieve certain ends. Don't try to taunt Zanu PF, because we've gone through worse things than before. And there is nothing for Zanu PF which is worse than a war. So we don't want to be taunted as a party. Kuda kufadza vayeni musi wavanouya. We will not allow it. We had a visit from the candidate of a sister party, Frelimo, a young man, 47 years old, Chapo. For Mozambique, this is the first time a born-free is a candidate for the ruling part of Mozambique. We are very happy about this choice by Frelimo, our sister revolutionary party. It clearly shows a passing of the baton from one generation to the next. So he came here. He was hosted by Zanu PF in this building. He also met our president in this, at State House, and the discussions were most cordial. He even had a chance to meet the expatriate Mozambican community in Zimbabwe, and there was palpable confidence about national identity from the Mozambicans who are in Zimbabwe. You know, we are, before the Portuguese and the British came, we were one country. We exported the great Zimbabwe civilization, all its gold and ivory from Mozambican ports. So these bonds, which are historical, were cemented by our common struggle during the national liberation wars against racism, apartheid in South Africa. So when we get a visit from Frelimo, we feel enchanted because we are sister or brother parties. So he came here and he was so thankful about his visit and the support which he got from Zimbabwe. He went back to Maputo, and Frelimo saw it fit to send a delegation to Zimbabwe, to the ruling party, to the government of Zimbabwe, to say thank you so much for the warm reception which you gave to our prospective candidate, to our candidate for the prospective elections. The elections are coming 9 October in Mozambique, and we are wishing all the best to President Daniel Chapo, 47 years old, to win on behalf of Frelimo and take advantage of the Frelimo win to cement the relations between Zimbabwe and Mozambique to a higher level. You can see what is going to happen now with the Zimbabwe coming back as the economic hinterland of Mozambique. Beira and Mutare collapsed in the 1960s, first because the federation ended in 1963, so the economic prospects dimmed. 2 years later, Ian Smith, who had worked hard to destroy the federation, declared UDI, and the country Rhodesia was placed under sanctions. So again, Mutare and Beira suffered because they couldn't be the gateway, eastern gateway exports of Zimbabwe's of Rhodesia's economic hinterland. 2 years, in 1975, a year after Frelimo took over, Zimbabwean youths poured into Mozambique in their tens of thousands, seeking arms and training to fight against Ian Smith. They were obviously inspired by Comrade Samora Machel and build upon what John Ziapapa Moyo and Comrade Chairman Chitepo had done in Zambia. So in 76, in February, the border is closed between Zimbabwe and Mozambique because of the war. So again, Beira and Mutare suffered. The railway line was cut. For 5 years, we were in war. There could be no commerce between the two countries because of the war. After the war, the South Africans stopped the integration of Zimbabwe and Mozambique economies by supporting Frelimo. We had to send our army to try to restore and protect the links between Beira and Mutare. We were now forced as a country to go all the way to Durban, 2,000 kilometers away, to export. A container leaves New York or Shanghai for $800 to Durban. Then it's rail and road transported to Zimbabwe. By the time it is here, it's $4,000. You can't compete when you are in such an inflationary environment caused by inordinate transport and logistics costs. Now what the president has done with the restoration of lithium mining and processing, with Manise becoming, because most of the steel from Manise is not for local consumption. It is for export to other countries. Now you can see that there is the prospects of Mozambique and Zimbabwe coming together with economic hinterland in Zimbabwe, supporting Mozambique as our logistical gateway to the world trade. So Mutare is going to be back full force. Beira is going to build new ports full force. This is what the president is delivering to the two economies of these two countries. So the links between Zimbabwe and Mozambique will almost be like that one between France and Germany, which formed the European Union. We are going to be joined at the hip once again in economic development. These are part of those deliveries which I keep on harping about what the president is doing. What do they do, these economic deliveries? They create a can-do, we can do it, confidence among the youth of this country. So unlike the despondence which was in the First Republic when we were always apologizing for being Zimbabweans, now there is a new pride. And this is why the youth are identifying with President Mnangagwa, because he has a vision, and a vision which is giving tangible results. And they don't want their future to be stolen away by the likes of Julius Malema and Kasukuwere. They don't like, because the president is doing things which are making them realize that they can become global citizens who can produce world-class goods made in Zimbabwe for the global market. So they have a new confidence, the youth. So we are so happy about our links with Mozambique, a SADC country, and we are praying hard, and we will support to any extent possible that President Daniel Chapo, the youthful leader of Frelimo, emerges as the new president of Mozambique come October. Okay, the other thing which I have here, we also hail our president. He has been constantly harping about Education 5.0 and the importance of science and technology. He has since gone on to instruct all Zimbabwean universities to develop research and to have faculties and innovation centers with a particular focus on a certain discipline. Universities create knowledge centers. Investors tap on those knowledge centers to apply external technical capacity, technological prowess, merit to local intellectual power. And then your country can start producing its own homegrown goods for the global market. We have to be a scientific country to make progress. And by the way, the only reason why we won the war of national liberation is because we used scientific socialism to analyze our society and mobilize our people according to their grievances which had been studied in a scientific manner so that they could support the war. The same principle is what the president is now applying for our economic development. Science and technology is important. So and it creates, again, a sense of purpose for our youths, because they are the ones who have the minds which can apply themselves to these challenges of innovation when we are part of the global and regional economy. We are positioning Zimbabwe for the African Free Trade Union Agreement. We want to produce goods which are made in Zimbabwe for 1.2 billion Africans, who are the most youthful consumers on the global stage today. Africa has got a dynamic young population, most of them below 35. And if they are given a chance to use the best technology, like what they did to Manisa, they will prove themselves that they can be global class workers who quickly and confidently convert capital funds into profit. And when you do that, businessmen flock to your country because they see their money being turned into profits by a competent labor force which is disciplined, which can deliver world-class goods made for the global market. So it is very important that when we hail the president for putting science at the center of our national development agenda. We are also very happy that after 3 years, the biggest economy in the world, which is America, has found it fit now to have an ambassador come to be credited in Zimbabwe. All along, they have been running the embassy with a chargé d'affaires. They've got one of the biggest embassies in Southern Africa. There was no ambassador. We are so happy, and we welcome Ambassador Pamela Tremont, the ambassador of the United States of America, to Harare. And we hope that this time, the emphasis of America on the negative about Zimbabwe is displaced by a much more healthier appreciation of the new realities of Zimbabwe as a regional player, as a continental player, and as a country which is trying to find its space on the global stage. We really pray hard that the upcoming American elections in November will give this ambassador a better leeway, a better mandate to pursue more positive relations with Zimbabwe. They have to displace the old chapters about regime change, about gratuitously attacking Zimbabwe, about phony human rights abuses. I mean, we have never killed 50 people in demonstrations like other countries. But we don't see the demonstrations in the UK now, which are on racial or religious lines in Zimbabwe. But somehow we have always been on the wrong side of attacks by the West. This is a question of hypocrisy and bias. We are hopeful that under Ambassador Tremont, we get into a new chapter, because if we get on well as we do with China, with America, which is the biggest economy in the world, our prospects of prosperity get bright. Because America is a big market. Even for our steel, America wants to build its infrastructure to match that of China. We can sell them good quality steel from Zimbabwe. Nothing wrong with that. And we make more money, then the Zimbabwe ZiG can even become stronger than what it is. So we are very confident. We are praying with quiet confidence that our relations with Washington will get to a new chapter, which is more focused on trade, finance, technological exchange, and people-to-people exchanges. Zimbabweans, they love good education. America provides it. I'm a product of American education. After the war, I got 3 university qualification degrees from America. I know what they can do, the Americans. So I very much push for positive relations between Zimbabwe and America. Then, in similar vein, at the beginning of this month, the China-Africa Forum is going to be held in Beijing. It's a summit of African leaders, and our president has been invited by the Chinese government to attend this summit. We are looking forward to more and deeper relations between Beijing and Harare, particularly in the area of manufacturing. Technology which we are using for lithium is coming from China. It is the best which is on the global stage today, lithium processing. China is unbeaten in lithium processing. They've got a whole full value chain of lithium processing. So if we can marry their technology to our national resource, it means more prosperity. The gold equipment which the young people are using to mine gold, the most appropriate technology is from China, because in China gold is everywhere, like in Zimbabwe. The technology from South Africa, the equipment from South Africa, is not so good because it's for deep reef mining up to 2 kilometers underground. In Zimbabwe, gold is everywhere on the surface. So we need more and more Chinese equipment. Then we can increase our gold production. Instead of young people digging 4 hours a day and then looking for the equipment all over, and the equipment, they may now start digging 24 hours in shifts with solar panels lightening their mines, even underground in shafts, so they save it and they get better equipment. So we hope, again, in gold production, we can increase our cooperation with Chinese technology so that we can produce more gold. And if we produce more gold, it means the ZiG becomes stronger. We may get to a situation where the US dollar is 3 and the Zimbabwe dollar ZiG is 1, because gold is better money than the US dollar. You understand? So these are the things which we hope will be on the plate of the president, because young people have already been breaking the ground, business ground, by going to Shanghai, the major city of China, for commercial relations. The same thing with steel. You know, the first time the president met the Chinese tycoon, Xiang Guangda, Mr. Big Shot, the one behind Manise, was in 2013. By then we had ferrochrome Selu at Afroshin, by Afroshin. Then things stalled a little bit. In 2018, after Operation Restore Lagos, the president went to China. He visited the same tycoon in their capital city, provincial capital city of Hangzhou. Out of that interaction between the president and the chairman of Tsingshan, Mr. Xiang Guangda, we got the coke oven batteries in Wange. Do you know that we're now almost producing $1 million worth of 1 million tons of coking coal? We now supply the region, South Africa, Zambia, Congo. We all supply from Zimbabwe. And do you know whom we've kicked out of the market for coking coal? We've kicked out the Chinese. It used to come from China. Now it's coming from Wange. Now that's why that road between Bulawayo and Wange is so bad, because trucks are carrying coking coal to South Africa. We need to put that on the railway line. So it means we can invest on the railway line, because there's a balance sheet for investment in railways. We shift from trucks to railways, the same money, and railways are cheaper. Out of that meeting in Hangzhou between the president and Mr. Xiang, he promised to build the steel plant. And today, despite COVID, we now have a steel plant. Then he came here 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago. He says, I will invest in lithium. Now he's got a lithium processing plant in Gwanda. By the way, that company is also the biggest producer of nickel. And nickel and lithium are the two of the three major components of electric batteries, including this phone. So he's already an investor in lithium processing in Gwanda. So, and his factories produce batteries. These batteries, your chargers for your phones. He has got probably 10 hectares of factories, this man, producing those batteries, and has built a private university. So we are hoping that maybe another meeting in China will bring in more investment from the same men in Zimbabwe. And then investment means more prosperity. It means better technology. It means world-class goods made in Zimbabwe for the global market. So we are very much looking forward to Zimbabwe's active participation in the China-Africa Forum come September this year. This is another major diplomatic event on the horizon of the president, in addition, of course, to SADC, which I've mentioned, and also the General Assembly in New York, where we'll continue to push for an African seat in the Security Council of the United Nations. We are Pan-Africans. These institutions were created when we were still colonies. They don't reflect African representation, and Zimbabwe is championing the African cause at the United Nations General Assembly. Those are generally the areas which I wanted to cover to give you a global perspective of where Zimbabwe's diplomacy is going with East engagement and re-engagement, to give you an appreciation of the regional ramifications of the re-emergence of Zimbabwe as an industrial heartland for Southern Africa, which has got so much foreboding for the Africa continental free trade area. We also touched on our bilateral relations with the most important neighbor to us, which is Mozambique. I touched on our youths, their assembly yesterday, and their unabated confidence in the leadership of President Mnangagwa because of the deliverables which he is giving and the can-do spirit which he has installed among Zimbabweans. And the youth, they are, Zimbabwe's youth, you've got to respect them. They have a singular page in African history. In the 1960s and 70s, we became an army, a formidable army which could defeat the foremost imperial power of the world, Britain, their Kespo in Rhodesia. Don't challenge Zimbabwe's youth. They will deliver things which will astound you. That's what they are doing in the economic field. Try to make them be busy with the economic issues and business issues. Don't try to take food away from their mouth because they are succeeding. And Zanu PF, by its nature, becomes very agitated if there is perception of interference and foisting of alien agendas to its policies and programs. And when they do that and their leadership is good, they bend around their leaders. And that's what they are doing. They are banding around President Mnangagwa. It is very important, and I do this with a heavy heart, that the Western countries should discourage these wayward tendencies by the Brandeis Foundation to try to interfere in Zimbabwean internal affairs, because we are busy building a multiracial society which can become an example for South Africa, because they've got challenges there, and you saw them in the last election. And the best way for them to address those challenges is when Zimbabwe is stable and progressive and succeeding. Now, if they try to encourage instability or try to interfere in Zimbabwean affairs, then you get our youths agitated. You may reap the whirlwind. It's not right that Western countries try to arouse Zimbabwean youths to agitation. It's best to let sleeping dogs lie, let them be busy with what they are doing, digging their gold, building steel plants, building new railway lines to link Zimbabwe to Mozambique, producing good quality tobacco for the cigarette manufacturers in the world, and then they can enjoy the prosperity which the Second Republic under President Mnangagwa is giving to them. Then they will not be bothered with anybody. But you try to interfere with that. Remember what Zimbabwean youth did in the 60s and 70s. Let sleeping dogs lie. I thank you.